Yeah, so good morning to everybody. I was told that we are 15, but one seems to be still in grief that New Zealand took over. Doesn't matter, I was in grief for 10 minutes and that's why I got late by 10 minutes. Yeah, so very quickly, name and discipline, please. I just want to know.
Anand Chaturvedi, mechanical industrial engineering from Rajasthan Engineering.
Yes, mechanical engineering.
Kamal Patel, Civil Engineering.
Utsav Mal, Electronics.
Dr. Osip Kumar Basumutari, Chemical Engineering.
Raman Chaudhary, computer science and engineering.
Which is?
Nalanda College of Engineering, Chandi.
Kumar, Nalanda College of Engineering, stream Civil Engineering.
Saurav Anand, Civil Engineering Department, Nalanda Engineering College.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Amita from Nalanda College of Engineering, Electrical Engineering Department.
Computer science, okay.
Kuldeep Kumar Dwivedi from Nalanda College of Engineering, Electrical Department.
Actually, our Department of Mechanical Engineering from Nalanda College of Engineering.
Chemistry, wow. You seems to be odd man, but I might like you during my presentation. Mostly seems to be electrical, mechanical, some computer science. Yeah, okay. So it's good that we have a interdisciplinary crowd, because what I am trying to sort of get you to is like how, for example, interdisciplinarity helps in bringing some end-to-end innovations and technology applications. It would be unfair, I got all of your names and disciplines and I didn't tell about myself. Although Jatin told about me. My name is here, Narendra Shah, and I am from Center for Technology Alternatives for Rural Areas of IIT Bombay. I have been here in IIT since last 27 plus years and have been associated with Tata Center since its inception about 5 years back. Yeah. So, I am going to discuss with you, share my stories of work, and feel free to stop me anywhere in between. Yeah, feel free to stop me anywhere. Pani. Boat asa dakla asa pani's pahiजे फक्त. Is there? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to share with you the stories, or I'm going to walk you through the as a guided tour through our projects, and while we sort of identified these field issues, field problems, I'm sure somebody must have told you so far about identification of problem, how it becomes important, right? There was something on, right, problem identification and why do we sort of, so always in the domain of engineering we ask these questions, why, how, I mean, see, something which you have so far heard is like know how, right? But this is perhaps some of you would be hearing why, know why. Why do we want to sort of explore in that particular domain? Why do we want to resort to our textbooks, handbooks more often when we have the sort of and I'm sure somebody from chemical engineering, you mentioned that you are from, so you must have read about or heard about Perry's handbook, right? Perry's handbook is this thick, right? I have a copy at my office. And often at times there is so much amount of data, tables, graphs, that it's if you can, in one's lifetime you can get to use to sort of at least some 15 graphs and 15 tables. I feel it's worth that, having done your engineering. And my teacher in my college used to tell me that over a period of time at least you must design one thing, at least one prototype, get it to the field and have it tested and see the sort of whatever learnings that you have. You would have hardships, you would have, but the sort of gratification would be that much more as the hardships would be. And as we would see, for example, and that's the kind of a philosophy that we try to instill here, not only in Tata Center but also in the center that I mentioned where I am associated with. So what I want to tell you through these stories is real life technical problem solving needs to draw upon interdisciplinary knowledge, literature, hands-on engineering. Right? Literature I meant was like handbook, Perry's handbook, or if somebody is from mechanical, Kent's handbook is something which gives you a lot of different things. I mean, how do you choose a pump, for example, right? Typical mechanical engineering problems, right? You know, because what we often tell people or our engineering students here, essentially I teach mostly postgraduate students, but there is some elective which I teach in BTech elective as a food process engineering is the course. But often at times, which I don't know whether you have faced this issue, but you go to a village, for example, right? Talk to people. People would not say that I need a mechanical engineer, you know, or I need a civil engineer, or I need a chemical engineer, you know. They would just tell you that, you know, this is source of water, this is my farm. How do I get water from here to here? And they would simply ask you questions. Or for example, in the months of summer, my well gets dry. How do I recharge it? Is it only tanker is the solution? That ask government and fill the wells with tanker or supply water with the tanker, or, you know. So when you have this kind of an engineering problem, then you will use your hydraulics, right? So you have a source of water, you have your farm, that's the head difference. Then how do I choose my size of pump? How do I calculate my head, suction head, delivery head? So that's the size of my pump that I would use. So what I'm trying to say is that in real life, people will ask you the problems. They will not ask you, you know, that I need amuk specialization or amuk kind of engineer. Okay, so this is just to give you background on my engineering. I've done my PhD in France on process engineering. My MTech is from an institute in Bangkok, which is called Asian Institute of Technology, like you have IIT here, is Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok. And then I have done my BTech in agriculture engineering from a university, Mahatma Phule Agriculture University in Maharashtra. And I have been in professor, as I mentioned to you. This is my email address. Right. So just to sort of actually, since all of you are from academics, I would just what you call tell you my journey of educational transformation and the kinds of research projects that I did. Right. As a part of BE, I am sure, I think your students would be doing some BTP, we call it here, BTech project or BE project, right. Some last year they would do 4 months, 6 months, 1 semester. We had that time, and when I was doing my BTech, we had this BTP, and I had worked on a problem. I mean, civil engineers would understand a little bit, but you don't really have to sort of know what this Hellish-Shaw model is. But there was something on vertical Hellish-Shaw model to simulate underground water drainage system, right. So irrigation and drainage is an important subject in civil engineering or agriculture engineering, where I did, because when you want to irrigate your farm, you need to sort of not only take care of water supply, but how do you drain it? Because if you leave water there for a long time, only paddy is the crop, right? All of you have heard paddy, right? Let's make it interactive. I don't want to have a monologue, right? So you have all heard of paddy. Paddy can withstand water, right? I mean, this is a season, Konkan areas and all. Coastal areas you have paddy, and which can sustain, but other crops do not sustain. Groundnut, for example, right? It cannot sustain, because all its pods have to come below the soil, right? So it cannot sustain. So you have to have a good drainage system. So your irrigation is as good as how good is your drainage system, how well you have sort of, you know, drained the excess water, because otherwise the root systems cannot respire, cannot take in that gaseous exchange, the air that it requires, aeration as we call it. So that was my BTech problem. But as you will appreciate, you know, 19, 20, 21 years old chap who is in the last year of BE, how does he have, I mean, I was perhaps I was driven by my guide there that time, who had freshly completed his PhD, and he says, well, you know, you can simulate your soils using some vertical Hellish-Shaw model. I mean, I'll show you a diagram. And you can create such a physical model in the lab, you can simulate soils, and you can sort of, you know, write differential equations wherein you can calculate the amount of flow that would. So if you see the diagram, possibly you can appreciate this better. So as you can see here, so we simulated, for example, we created out of plexiglass a model, you can imagine 2 plexiglass, ½ inch of width, and in between you have all this viscous flow. We simulated water using some liquid and sort of, saw how, for example, water would drain and so this was some kind of a Helisha model which people had used it in some kind of a petrochemistry, right, because under the ground you have liquid fuels and so that we sort of, so that was my BTech project, just to sort of give you a little glimpse. Whereas what did I do in my MTech? In my MTech, which was in the field of agriculture machinery and food process engineering, I studied on use of float devices for supporting wetland paddy machines, right. So how many of you have seen a paddy field? We just talked about paddy, right. Quite a few of you have seen how a paddy field looks like. And so what's the problem? Why can't I take a tractor there? Why do I have to sort of, build something which will float? Why can't I take a simple tractor in the water is there and the soil has lost its bearing ability. I would simply bog down. If I take my tractor, I won't be able to move because tractor would require some kind of a traction. Therefore, it's tractor, right? So that's why its the wheels behind are larger, right? If you have seen a tractor, the front wheels are small, the rear wheels are bigger because it provides you traction with the ground. And if you take this tractor, is a good likelihood, depending on how much the soil has converted into mud, it will bog down, right? It won't simply move, right? So, not only in India, but a lot of the Southeast Asian countries also have paddy lands, and here, for example, our objective was how can we have those small, you have seen the tractor, but there is a walking type tractor. Kuch logon ne dekha hai, right? It's called power tiller, right? You hold it like this and you walk behind, right? And then there is an engine there in the front, and then there are 2 wheels. And so the objective was, can we make it kind of a floating device, partly floating? So how do we help? Because see, one is its weight, which would make it go down, So can we sort of give those devices? And as you can see here in the picture, that was the objective there. For example, you see, typically this is what people do. They, instead of the rubber tires, people put some kind of a metallic wheels which are called cage wheels, which helps you, but not completely. So my problem there was, how can we have something which would sort of, so have you seen those skis in the ice areas in the western countries, for example? People go to Switzerland and, because not many part of our countries would have ice, right? So they have those skis. You ever heard those game? People sort of, so those were the float devices which motivated me to take it sort of, for this and then, so a simple things like, I again simulated a field, but there not like my BTech project in a lab with plexiglass sheets and all that. What I did was from here to end of that table where Romit has put the camera, and then exactly same depth. So this is what is called as a soil bin. Okay, I don't know whether civil engineers use it, but agriculture engineers use this kind of a bin to sort of experiment their machines. How would they perform? What would be soil machine interaction, measuring the forces. So for example, if I had a plow, right, all of you have heard about an important agricultural operation called plowing, right? So if the soil is hard, what is going to happen in terms of forces? If the soil is hard, what would happen? It would take more force, right? So typically you have bullocks, if not tractor. So either motive power is tractor or bullocks, and if you come across a boulder, a big stone in the field, what would happen? Let's say my bullocks are driving me and I am behind and I have a plow underneath, right? Whatever type, moldboard plow or something. And there is a big boulder which comes in. What happens? Bulls would not simply move. Tractor will start simply slipping, right? it will be stationary because it cannot take that kind of a pull because the boulder is heavy. So if I want to do these kinds of experiments as a engineering student, and I want to know if I have designed these floats and if my soil metal interaction, because those floats are made out of, imagine the skis are made out of metal, and there would be some kind of an interaction, and I want to measure that. So what I would do is I would sort of, in my soil bin, as it is called, of this size, I would put that and I will measure the forces, right. So those who are from electronics into instrumentation background, you would know how to measure forces, right. How do I measure a force? Let's say if I have 1/10 of that. So if I have a ski like this and I want to move it over the soil surface, and I want to find out how much of force is taken to move this based on the soil surface, how would I measure that force? Huh? No, but that's energy. Force into mass is distance traveled is energy. But my question is, how do I measure that force in kilograms or newtons or whatever? How do I measure that? How much I require to pull it? I saw you yesterday, you were in the Tata Center lab, right? Some instrumentation. So there is some sensor or a device that allows you to measure the force to pull this. What is that? Anybody has come across? There must be some way, right, in electronics, right? One is spring, right? Essentially we use for, vertical loads, for example, or that spring balance we call it. So here we call it as actually a transducer, right? So similar principle we would use, for example, and then sort of you would put that transducers and you would measure. In civil engineering you use that universal testing machine, right? UTM, you use it because there, for example, you want to have the, what is that, force versus the shear or displacement that you want to measure, and there is some yield point or something like that. Tensile you want to measure and all that. So there would be some sensor. So something like that we sort of. So what I am trying to bring here is like, this is really when you want something to be delivered, you want sort of, so these inputs to be given to a machinery designer, you would have to draw upon the other sciences. Like here in instrumentation, you would want to know, for example, how do I measure my force? Now, one of the things that I did was, as a function of, for example, the distance traveled, what was the drag force? As you can see here on y-axis, there is a drag force or something like that. So if there is no water film, so this is something which is obvious to it. It's a what we call general engineering sense, right? If the soil is too dry, it is going to take more force to, whereas if there is something wet, right, it is going to take lesser sort of, and perhaps that could be a reason we put soap, right? Right. So you want to sort of not have any cuts or something like that. So simple thing, but you create an evidence, you measure, you do sort of, put those sort of, so that, because when you want to design a power tiller, as an engineer, I could ask a question, why 10 horsepower? Why not 12 horsepower? Why not 8 horsepower? So there must be some logic or understanding which would have gone behind. So that logic comes from these kinds of experiments. Okay, so this was my MTech problem, and then look at what I did for my PhD. And if you really closely observe, now you will be able to see from a vertical Hilshaw model, which involved lot of differential equations and calculations in calculating the sort of, the flows and defining the flows and all that. And here, for example, was something to support wetland machinery to answer those design questions. That was the MTech project in research. And PhD project, for example, was study of partial combustion kilns for optimal charcoal making. How many of you have heard what is charcoal as a material? Charcoal, as you see here, charcoal. सुना है किसने charcoal? लकड़ी से बनाते हैं charcoal. कहाँ use करते हैं charcoal? All of you understand Hindi, right? So I can shift to Hindi sometime. I'm allowed, right? Although the official language here is English, but I can shift to Hindi. So चारकोल सर ने बोला वुड से बनाते हैं, लकड़ी से. Where do we use? Where do we see it being used? ईट के भट्टों में यूज करते हैं, करेक्ट? दे कुड आइदर यूज अ मिनरल कोल और अ चारकोल. चारकोल देयर इज लिटिल एक्सपेंसिव फॉर अ brick kiln, right? So they also put rice husk, sawdust, things like this. Otherwise, if you walk on a Mumbai streets or a Pune streets, Nagpur streets, I don't know where you are from, your cities, but if you are from Maharashtra, you will see these things. And if you walk on in the urban localities, where do you see charcoal being used? Right? Perfectly. Where you eat bhutta, or here if you are staying in hostel, in front of H1, hostel 1, there is a guy who makes nice bhutta for you. So for roasting bhutta, you use this charcoal. Right? For roasting bhutta, you use this charcoal. Now, this charcoal coal is made from wood. So my PhD problem was, how do we sort of go ahead and measure the performance? I don't know if anybody of you would have seen a charcoal kiln. किसी ने देखा है कैसा? लकड़ी का ऐसा माउंट बनाते हैं. You know, many of our states have now banned charcoal making because wood is becoming scarce. You know, trees are being cut. You don't get enough rains, water problem and all that. So many of the states, Maharashtra, Gujarat, that I know, that they have banned, unless you have some kind of a planted forest. बर्निंग के टाइम थोड़ा सा उसको पॉटरी बोलते हैं उसको, उसमें थोड़ा सा यूज करते हैं, बट नॉट एज अ मटीरियल ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन. इट इज ओनली एज अ हीट सोर्स, only as a heat source. So charcoal essentially is like, you know, or if you have chemical engineer, you said somebody was chemical engineering discipline, you said, so like you say there is a reaction of reduction. So charcoal is a cheap source of carbon. तो स्टील को आपको, you know, और को कन्वर्ट करना है तो you use this in this. And also one of the value added use is, you have seen those water filters in the houses. Right? In the water filters, for example, the bed is made out of charcoal because it has a very good absorption ability, and also
earthquake बनाते हैं वो electrical earthing
earthing
के लिए.
के लिए, right? Earthing के लिए also you can use that. And other use, now here I cannot ask how many of you are smoking. Hope none of you are smoking, but I'm sure all of you have seen cigarettes. Madam, have you seen a cigarette? How a cigarette looks, right? So a cigarette has got two parts, right? What are those two parts? Since you said yes, I'm asking you.
I have seen it.
You have seen it? No, but you can, I mean, there's no apology. So, right, you have a white and then something behind. So the first white part contains those tobacco particles, and what is behind? Filter, right? There's a filter. So that, you know, I think Professor Mahadani already gave a talk on gasifier. No. So that cigarette, we call it as an updraft gasifier. So tomorrow he is going to talk on gasification. So you would appreciate that. It's an updraft gasifier because you have a combustion zone somewhere where the cigarette is lighted. Then there is a biomass through which all your smokes come. So you want a filter in between. Can somebody tell me now, why do you need a filter in between at the end of the cigarette? Right? So those tar particles, as they say, you know, because what happens is that the tobacco pieces, or biomass as we call it, if you pass the hot gases through that biomass, there is a possibility of generating those tars, and which are not good for our system, right? Not good for our system. So that filter, people use activated carbon, things called activated carbon. लिखूँ इस पर? नहीं, ठीक है, अगर पेन है तो कुछ लिखना है तो. So some uses of charcoal, I am telling you. Activated carbon, again you want to sort of have that filter which contains activated carbon absorb all those undesired materials which are coming as a result of smoking or passing those gases through tobacco, with tobacco. So that was my PhD problem, and I can show you how a kiln looked like in a field. This is a charcoal kiln. You can see the wood, okay, and so this is actually called partial combustion kiln. You know, combustion, all of you have heard, I'm sure. Mechanical engineers, chemical engineers would have gone through that course on combustion, fuels, right, solid fuels, gaseous fuels and all that, right. So this is partial combustion because you want to convert, as sir said, from wood to charcoal. Then sort of if you take this as a chemical engineering reactor, right? If you take this as a reactor, for example, right, you would have its mass conversion efficiencies, energy conversion efficiencies, because charcoal essentially, as I said, bhutta garam karne ke liye use karte hai, so that you have it is, you use it as a heat source, right? So wood, for example, is a fuel material. All of you agree with me? Many of our industries still use firewood. You have heard? What industries, even if you go to some villages, they still cook on the wood stove, right? So it's a source of wood, and if you sort of Google these days, I mean, handbook to dur ki baat reh gayi, these days handbooks are on your smartphones, right? Handbooks on the smartphones. If you Google, for example, you will find out that the wood has something like 15 megajoules per kilogram, right? 15, about 4.5 kilocalories or 5 kilocalories, and so 4,000 kilocalories. So which is about 15 megajoules per kilogram, which gives, wood gives you that kind of energy. Now, why do we want to sort of first of all convert this? If we are going to use wood as a fuel, for example, in some industries, let's say, or reduction operations, why do we have to convert this in you know, because there is some efficiency, and I'll give you some figures. Mass conversion efficiencies of the order of, good kiln will give you 25 to 30%, which means if you use 100 kilograms of wood, will give you how much charcoal? 25, right? I said 25% efficiency. Simple calculation. 100 kilo se 25 kilo milta hai. So which means 75 kilos is lost, right? Where does it go? It goes into the smoke, right? So now if you have that much of the mass conversion efficiencies, why do you think people convert this into charcoal? I can burn it as a fuel wood, right? Somebody said it's, some industries use a fuel wood. Why do I convert this into the charcoal? It contains moisture, it gives problem, it has smoke. Fine. So you are right in terms of 80% of your answers are correct. Imagine I live in a Mumbai slum called Dharavi. Have you heard of a slum called Dharavi, right? 2.5 kilometer square area, 7 lakh people living, and you know, and you want to cook your food. Using wood, it will be difficult, right? Because it has high moisture. लकड़ी का moisture होता है, 50%, 60% moisture होता है. Charcoal is nice, smokeless fuel. You would have said smokeless stoves or something like that. So you can sort of burn it efficiently and make quickly your whatever food that you want to make, because people are there in Dharavi and they have to go for work. They are here because of compulsion. They live in that kind of conditions because of compulsions, right? Some of you would have seen Slumdog Millionaire. Yes. How many raise hand? देखा है? So उसमें they show you that the boy goes to the, you know, he lives in that slum, and sort of, you know, what kind of constraints in which people live. So look at the kind of transition. BTech, Helesha model, differential equations. For MTech, I come a little bit down and I work on flotation devices. On PhD, much closer to the field, right? I mean, I myself tell myself at times when I look back that how close I was to the sort of field. As engineers, what I am trying to bring here a point in this particular course for you is excellence come, I mean, that's what we tell our students also here. Excellence come not only from your depth of work, but also how relevant is your technique or technology. How relevant is your technique or technology. So here, for example, people were looking for this kind of, you know, a simple thing, as sir mentioned, that moisture content of wood is higher, so it gives smoke. So the conversion fraction, for example, comes down as the moisture content goes up. Right. So I said that as a part of the PhD work, I established heat and mass transfer conversion efficiencies and all that. So if I sort of, you know, generated this kind of a relationship, established this kind of a relationship, that on x-axis you have the moisture content of wood and here you have the mass conversion efficiency. Where would I use this for? What good it is for society? Or in the sense that society, in the sense people in the domain who make charcoal, those industries. Now you have people with industries, they don't use this mounds and all that. You have brick kilns or a metallic kilns or something like that. That what I showed you was earlier, and even in some forest areas you can sort of create where you don't have those brick kilns or metallic kilns. So where would I use this information that the efficiencies, mass conversion efficiencies are coming down like this as my moisture content increases? Or what would I learn as a chemical engineer? For example, let's say I was a chemical engineer and I have got this relationship. How would I use this now? Precisely, sir. Very good. Excellent. Double A. 100% mark. So what I'll do is I will sort of integrate a dryer or pre-treatment. I dry the wood, I get better efficiencies. Right? So this was something which was learning for my PhD. Sir, it took me 3 years to understand you. 5 minutes you answered. Good. Yeah. Alright. So also answered practical questions. Conversion efficiency depend on initial moisture content and hence pre-drying makes sense. Right? Okay. So I think this already you have heard end-to-end problem solving. Somebody gave a talk to them on this, right? Yeah. Initially who Santosh sir gave a, right? So he has told you end-to-end problem solving. So I will not deal. So what I want to sort of demonstrate through cases is what role we as academicians, or technical institutions, what kind of role you have. I think all of you are from private engineering colleges or government, right? So further added load on us. Like if you were from private, they don't allow you to do so much of a research. But if you are government engineering college, perhaps at least 20% of time, 15% of time. What percentage of time they give you to do research? 10%? 10% time or more than that? Like we, for example, get here 50% time. Maybe you will call us that you are live in luxury or something. But 50% of our time we can consecrate on our research. Right? I mean, that's valued. Teaching, they say everybody does. Okay, fine. But what good publications you are doing? I mean, that's how we are assessed over a period of time. Yeah. So what role do we have? Thank you. So what role do we have or what responsibility we have is provide alternate solutions to the questions posed by public and private sector institutions. In my case, because since I deal with agro, food, nutrition, this kind of area, so farmers, farmer organization, civil society, and then academic institutions can create evidence through research and knowledge that is unbiased. What do I mean there? Because all this public sector, private, corporate, Reliance वगैरह उनका तो है ना, in-house R&D है, right? So what is the difference that the in-house R&D of Tata Motors, for example, and we? What difference you think would be there? It's open book exam. You have the answer there on the board, on there. So what is the difference? Unbiased, right? Unbiased. If I was a private company, I would lead you to something which I am making as a product. Buy my products, you would sort of get more efficient, Like get those, क्या बोलते हैं? Those who make fridges, they give you star. Those who make ACs, for example, ACs यहाँ पे है नहीं, centralized AC है. But if you have that AC, it gives you stars, right? 5-star AC, 4-star AC, or fridges, for example, refrigerators in the house, they will have stars. And more the stars, they will say it's more efficient or something like that, But it could be biased, right? That star rating could be biased. Or my car is more fuel efficient, or it controls more emissions, right? It could be biased. But as an academic institution, we have a role and we have to give this kind of results which are unbiased. Therefore, say for example, BMC would ask IIT Bombay whether the bridge making, I mean, in example in civil engineering, was there sort of all parameters. I mean, if something falls down, they'll point this one and not L&T as a advisor, right? Or expert opinion. They would ask IIT because the civil engineering faculty would give the more unbiased view, okay, quote unquote, more unbiased view. But that's our role. I mean, according to me, this is what is our, and particularly the Tata Center tells us here, since last 5 years that we have here, work on resource constrained farming community, which is often hungry for solution and ways to create value addition to farm produce. Often at times there is a tendency in urban communities like us, me included, saying that अरे फार्मर्स को उसको क्या पता है, वो 10वीं भी पास नहीं है, 8वीं पास है, 7वीं पास है, उसको क्या पता है, वो इलिटरेट है. No. Quite often at times they know their stuff. Quite often at times they know their stuff, and not to demean them and sort of, that is what I have learned over the years, that, any solution that you want to develop, be with them, talk to them, and sort of, the solution would emerge, which they will adopt. नहीं तो बोलेंगे हाँ हाँ आपके सामने, will never adopt. Right? Will never adopt something like that, the technology that. So, and they are always hungry. If you show something to them which makes economic sense, that's why I say affordability and the viability, technical performance and the sort of economic. So, whatever you devise as an intervention, and I'll tell you about the seed storage technology that we have worked, and then the jasmine flower post-harvest, supply system, what we have developed, and they will adopt our, we are still, it's hot from oven. In fact, one of the images that you will see of a mogra, how many of you have heard of mogra, jasmine? The white flower that you get, what would be the cost of that white flower in Mumbai market? Just guess, and you don't lose any marks for guessing. What could be the price of those jasmine flowers in Mumbai market? It's per kilo, by the way, it's sold per kilo. Go early morning to a place called Dadar here. You know it where Dadar is, right? So, Dadar is a flower market. So, in the morning 6 o'clock you go and you want to buy, because that's the central place, then the retailers come here and then take the jasmine flowers or mogra flowers. You said something?
1,500.
Very good, sir. Yeah, I think you seem to have AA graders. Because I often at times hear from people 20 rupees kilo, at the most 400 rupees per, but you have guessed it correctly. Now, for example, this time if you go, it's about 1,200, 1,000, because it's not a bloom. It blooms only 2 times in a year, and this time it's not so much, but come Ganpati here, the Ganesha time, you will have a bloom, and it's about 1,200, 1,300 rupees. So, it's a commodity which sold at that price. How much does the farmer get? 30 rupees, 40 rupees. How far from here? 100 kilometers from here. So how do we do value addition and things like that? And they say, for example, as I said, the collector here from a district which is headquarters not more than 120 kilometers from here, it's called Palghar. It's a new district carved out of Thane. Okay, so the collector there is some PhD person from TIS, Tata Institute. So he understands all this, and he has given us funds, for example. Looking at our project that we did as a part of Tata Center, seed project, he said, well, I like your technology, I want to make a cluster of mogra farmers, and can I put this device there, and sort of, from 40 rupees that the farmers get, can he get to 100 rupees, and it makes 2.5 times value addition for him. So we will see that here. So this you have heard about, like this is the center that I work with. I won't say too much about it. Just in case any of your students want to do, because we do take interdisciplinary students. We take students from mechanical, chemical, electrical, production, electronics. And one of the USP of our MTech program is we put students for 9 weeks in field stay in a village, and we say that living with them, like what our MKG said. Who was MKG? MKG suna hai aapne kisi ne? MKG said that India lives in its villages. Who was MKG? Right? Mohandas Karamchand. Right? So he said India lives in villages. So we took that philosophy, and we do send our MTech students for 9 weeks in the program of 2 years. In between they have 2 months. So what they do is, like, they learn, as I mentioned, that water source, and then they tend to appreciate why there is, for example, a stream, water flowing, and they come and tell us. This is now 12th year back. Students are just returning from their field stay. They say, sir, we now appreciate more what a water stream is, and why the roads made out of black cotton soil, for example, give you that kind of a problem, right? The civil engineers would appreciate the black cotton soil, for example. It's so expansive, and like if you go through during the rainy season, you will have issues, your shoes and machines and and your bullock carts and all that. So why, for example, a road made out of black cotton soil does not work in rainy areas here. So they say they understand this. So that's that. And Tata Center, you have already heard, you have these kinds of domains in Tata Center: agri-food, education, energy, healthcare, waste management and water. And this is the sector in which I have been working for since its inception. So this is the courses that I teach: soils, agriculture, agro-waste industries, food processing and nutrition. Okay. So I think let's not really spend too much time here. What I just wanted to understand that, you know, in order to make a point to our decision makers, that often at times we are sort of, you know, struggling with size. We say that if you have a small size, efficiencies are better, right? Often at times we say that, you know, smaller, and we give example of Singapore. Why Singapore is doing it? Sir, they are small, their population is not too large and all that. India is too large, too big and all that. Look at this, I mean, it's counterintuitive, right? The average size of holding in United States is, for example, about 400 acres, right? They hold about 400 acres each farmer. India 2.5 acres. Anybody has conflict on this number? You know that about 2 to 5 acres is something which, I mean, maybe Punjab is different. You have large farms, but average size of farm holdings in India is about 2 to 2.5 acres. Look at the kinds of efficiencies that you have. In US, for example, you get that many tons per hectare, rice, corn. So everywhere there is something like 2 to 3 times. Everywhere there is 2 to 3 times. So it's something like counterintuitive. So work with data. Don't make any statements based on your impressions. है ना कि साइज छोटा है तो आई विल डू इट एफिशिएंटली और समथिंग लाइक मोर ऑफन इट इज ट्रू दैट्स व्हाई देयर आर न्यूक्लियर फैमिलीज राइट. अब घर छोटे क्यों बने हैं कि छोटा घर है तो आई विल बी एबल टू प्रोवाइड मोर अटेंशन. अर्लियर फैमिलीज यूज्ड टू बी बिग, राइट? नाउ देयर आर न्यूक्लियर फैमिलीज. बट not always. You say smaller, I mean, there's a book called Small is Beautiful. I don't know if anybody has heard about this book. There's a British author called E.F. Schumacher, right? He wrote a book called Small is Beautiful. This is counterintuitive, right? This data is something which is not goes into the small is beautiful, right? They do sort of give you yields which are something like 2 to 3 times more than this, okay? So, yeah, so with this, let me just indicate that what I have is some kind of 5 different case studies. So, and these are all based on the research, the first-hand research that we have done at our center. One is I mentioned to you about jasmine flowers. Second is about cotton stalk to animal nutrition. Cotton stalk क्या होता है? Anybody know what is cotton stalk? Anybody knows? Cotton का plant होता है, right? You have a boll. So once you remove those bolls along with the seeds, what remains is that stem and the, right? So that's called cotton stalk. Like you have rice straw, paddy का जो रहता है after you remove the earhead. So like that, if you have a cotton plant and you remove those bolls which are used for textile making, what remains is cotton stalk, and the quantity is huge. In the country, we have something like last year, 2016. Last year, 2016 data indicates something like 23 million tons, right? 23 million tons. मुझे भी ये numbers के साथ बहुत problem होता है. Anything more than million, crore is a statistics for me. 1 crore rupees मैंने कभी नहीं देखा अभी. शायद आप लोगों में से किसी ने देखा होगा 1 crore. So 23 million tons, you normally get a difficulty to feel about it. But let's say per acre you have something like, you can imagine, about 4 quintals. Okay, so it's 4 times or 5 times more weight than the boll of cotton. So cotton is grown for its boll because it's a fiber or a textile giving plant. But can you make this as a resource? So in fact, one of our environmental engineer here defines these residues as it's called. He says waste is a resource out of place. Right? Let me write that. He wrote a very good statement. He made a very good statement. He said, what is waste? How do you define waste? He said waste is a resource out of place. right? So after you remove those balls, what happens is often at times you burn it, and therefore Delhi people say that your air gets polluted in the month of October, November, right, in winter. And part of the reason they say because farmers in Punjab and Haryana burn their residues, because it's difficult to get people to sort of uproot whatever is remaining, and the easiest option is in place of collection, you just burn it there on the field. So it gets burned. So we have done a project, can we sort of use this at least 23 million tons, 5% of this, 5% of 23 million tons is how much, madam? 5% of 23 or 20 million tons, let's say, easier calculation. 5% of 20 is 1 million tons, 1 million, that was 20. Okay, so 5% of that, if you use 1 million tons and convert that into animal nutrition, because often at times in the part of India where, for example, in Maharashtra, they grow a lot of cotton in the area called Vidarbha, Marathwada, and there is not much of water there. These are water-starved farmers, and so the animals do not get enough fodder. So can we convert this resource? I am just saying waste is resource out of place. So can we convert this, make it as a resource and convert into something which can sort of, instead of burning, into animal food? What happens is that cotton stalk becomes as hard like a wood. Okay, so animals won't eat wood, right? It's so hard because of its lignin. Now, if you understand the chemistry of this cotton stalk, why it is like wood, because it has got high lignin content. And cellulose is something which we sort of use it in this animal feed. So how do we sort of convert this? How do you make it softer? So one of my PhD students some 15 years back had worked on use of ozone to decontaminate or reduce the microbial loads on tomatoes, right? So he had taken the tomatoes, passed it or exposed it to ozone gas, O3, right? Most of you would know what is ozone, and ozone is like very easy to sort of make these days because it is all replacing in water treatment and all that, right? So O3, ozone, is nothing but oxygen plus you have O, which you sort of generate using oxygen from the cylinders, pure oxygen, and you pass some high electric current and it generates you a gas which is called ozone. So that ozone, for example, he used it, and then it was kind of a serendipity that we did some experiments of passing ozone on the cotton stalks, and we see that lignin cellulose bond is breaking. So it suddenly it's becoming softer, animals start eating it. So we did that kind of an experiment. I'm sorry you're not getting my front. But they seem to be liking the way I speak from there. You want me to only speak from here? Okay. So so that was one project, and in fact just 2 days back we had a presentation for a translation grant in the town, and we did this sort of a seed grant project for Tata Center with a veterinary college, and that was only on small ruminants like goats, for example. So we saw how their weights increase if you feed this kind of a feed, and otherwise what people give is something like green fodder, but green fodder is a luxury. As I said, in Marathwada, Vidarbha, it doesn't rain, there is not so much of water. You can't devote the lands for fodder crops so much as the other parts of land. Maybe in Punjab, for example, you have good fertile land and there is a water, still I heard that there is still the groundwater is depleting more and more and more. But in Punjab, if you have to go 200 feet down, in Marathwada you have to go 2000 feet down. In order to get water, you have to go 2000 feet down. It's like mining of water. So since you are growing cotton, you are sort of going to have these residues. How about converting this and getting into using this technology option? The third a technology that we have worked with on exactly, yeah. So as I said, people will ask you this question that so it comes to something like 8 to 10% of the cost of the raw material. So if the raw material is, let's say, 4,000 rupees per ton or 2,000 rupees ton, it would be about 5 to 8% of the cost. So ozone generating, as I said, the costs are going down because people are finding ozone as an alternate to to chlorine for water treatment. Like all swimming pools, for example, use ozone. If you see the drinking water bottle, on the drinking water bottle it is always mentioned O3 or something like that, exposed to O3, because it reduces the what you call your microbiological load. So therefore, the ozone generator costs are going down, so it makes an economic sense. So that's what we are. So as I said 2 days back only, they gave us a big project from the Maharashtra Science and Technology Council to try it on a bigger ruminants. But we tried on goats, where our outcome variable was weight gain over a period of 3 months. So in this animal nutrition project, the work so far we had was on goats, because goats are sold as what? Anybody knows? Goats are, where do you find their market value? Goats? Meat. Slaughterhouses. Okay. So when they become 25-30 kilos, the goatery people, the people who keep goats, they sell them, and so their objective is to enhance the weight as soon as possible, within 6 months, within 8 months, come that particular festival, people are demanding Eid and Bakrid, and Bakri means actually goat. Okay, so they want to have that, and the farmer gets maximum money based on weight. So he wants to have the weight from 20, from the initial age of whatever, initial weight of something like 8 to 9 kilos to 25 kilos within 3-6 months. Okay, so that was our outcome variable there. But now we are going to work on a bigger ruminants, where like cows and buffaloes, where milk production is sort of going to be. So that's what is the project now, next project that we are going to do. The third project that we did was on making jaggery. Jaggery kitne logon ne suna? Good. Huh? Why good is good? Is there any reason? Is there any benefit of eating good compared to white sugar?
No chemical.
No chemical. Anybody else has? Pardon? Blood purification. Very difficult to sort of prove, but iron is something very easy to prove. Calcium, it has got minerals. White sugar does not have minerals. White sugar is 99% sucrose, right? Whereas this jaggery, which is unrefined sugar, is a sweetening agent, right? Made from the same raw material, right? From cane, right? Sugar cane, everybody has seen. So from sugar cane, right, you can either make jaggery or white sugar, right? So some of the benefits we heard of jaggery, because it contains mineral and our body needs mineral. So perhaps our ancestors had a good wisdom, or perhaps they did not know that you can make a sugar mill of 5,000 tons per day, 10,000 tons per day, right? This came only after 1940s, after independence, 1950s. First sugar factories were put in 1940. Before that, most of the cane was going into this, and now it is exactly reversed. Before independence, something like 95% of the cane was converted into jaggery. Now it's only about 10 to 20%. 20% of the cane is converted into jaggery. So over the years, we have forgotten the nutritional benefit of this jaggery. Blood purification, I don't understand, but some people, yes, I have read. Ayurveda, for example, says that jaggery is a better sweetener. Okay, so that's what the project, because what is happening is, over the period, not many people are converting, as the data suggests, that only 20% or 15% of the cane being converted into jaggery. Now, what could be a reason, a technology reason, for example? Okay, one is, like we say, big factories came which can convert 5,000 to 10,000 tons of cane per day in a factory. Typically, a sugarcane factory crushes about 5 to 10,000 tons per day. So that's one reason, that it's arrogance of the big, right, the big mill. What could be the other reason that the jaggery conversion has come down? Let me say that the conversion efficiencies are almost similar. You get about 10 to 12% efficiency, meaning you crush 100 kilograms of cane, you get about 10 to 12 kilograms of sugar or 10 to 12 kilograms of jaggery as well. Okay, so mass conversion efficiency, let us agree, for example, is same. So that what could be the other reason then? Why this? If you see this train, 1947, 2019, right? I said that you were about 90%, 95% cane was crushed here and converted into jaggery. That has come down and it is only 20% now.
Process is tedious, and
Very good. Another area, sir.
making the taste is also
Taste is sort of, it's the other way around. People like good cut taste. Jaggery taste is so like you come from a summer in Rajasthan or some hot area and in the afternoon you come in the home, people give you a piece of jaggery and water because they say that you have dehydrated in summer. Let me sort of give you some minerals in the form of a jaggery good cup piece and then water. Yeah. So you were saying something.
taste is also when you make it some different person makes, then the taste is different. So
Let me convert a little bit your argument into this, that you think of a housewife, or not a housewife, no, you can't say housewife, it's a derogatory word. I have to say housemaker, right? Housemaker, sorry about that, housewife. So a homemaker would always want to, let's say, make 5 cups of chai. It's easier to measure sugar. So in terms of convenience, right? 8 chamach, 9 chamach sugar डालना is easier than the jaggery because jaggery comes in lumps, right? So convenience is another reason. Anybody, any technology reason other than like, well, sugar factory is almost automated. You know, some 200 people can run a plant of 10,000 tons or 5,000 tons per day, right? Another reason is like byproduct in sugar mills, what is called molasses, right? You would have heard molasses. So that byproduct can be more economically used to make alcohols and things like that. So you get more revenue. But as a consumer, somebody like me wants to continue using jaggery, take its nutritional benefit of mineral content, because these days there is a fad in nutrition, you know, which has come from Western countries, that I will take supplements. You know, 90%, or I mean that's what our orthopedic surgeon here sells, that some 80 to 90% of Janta here on campus, including me, and I mean that 80 to 90%, is vitamin D deficient. You know, because I don't take enough vitamin D or the minerals in my food. So urban living people, because of Western habits, take pills then, you know, take calcium, take vitamin B. My doctor tells me every day you take vitamin B pill. You know. So calcium, if you say that there is a good relationship with your health, why not take it through these sweeteners which our, you know, our country had, for example, of making. So just one last point that I would like to know, if not then I will tell, why this technology has not sustained. One, we said arrogance of sugar mills, that it's sort of used, byproduct is used, and its convenience of use is there in sugar, for example. So these are the reasons we adopted. There is one more reason which made us, prompted us to undertake this project as a part of, you know, TCTV, to sort of, you know, study the processes which being used here, and I'll give you a clue. We also tried to do a little bit automation, and I think sir mentioned it's like tedious or something like that. It's tedious, it's very clumsy, it's very clumsy, and not many workers on these units want to continue working there. 12 years, 10 hours, 12 hours that you have to work on this unit, it's so much of drudgery involved in it, so much of efforts involved in it, and it's near the hot pan. If anybody has seen how a good is made, you have seen, right? So you have a kadhai, 13 feet diameter kadhai, उसमें जूस क्रश करके, शुगर केन क्रश करके जूस डालते हैं, उसके नीचे उसका बगैस से उसको गर्म करते हैं, and then its temperature is something like, you know, 120 degrees Celsius, and then the person has to be,
a movie of Amitabh Bachchan and
right, Saudagar,
Saudagar.
right, Saudagar film, good, you remember that. So if time allows, I will also show you a film, not of Amitabh Bachchan and Nutan, but our film and our heroes there who sort of, you know, I don't know how much time, half an hour I have, or yeah, okay. So so that was one, and then decentralized small scale seed storage unit. So it's somehow. What would we say is the difference between a seed and grains that we eat? What can we say as a science or a technical person? So the rice that I eat at home, can I use it as a seed in the farm? Or the wheat that I sort of send it to my chakki, can I use that as a seed in the farm? No, why not? Anybody knows a science or a technical reason? The answer is partially correct. No, we can't. But what is the reason? What do we look for as a seeding material than the grain material which provides us calories, whatever, proteins and all that? What is the difference, essential difference between the seed, the grains as seed, and the grains as food grains? What is the difference? Okay, so there is a characteristic which is called as germinability or germination count. See, what we would sort of, we just saw for paddy, for example, people go in the farm when they don't have a tractor or those sort of, you know, the power tillers and things like that. So then the farmer has to go in the knee deep mud, and if he is going to sort of, you know, sow his seeds, he would look for at least 70%, 80% germination count. Right? Meaning he sows 100 seeds, at least 70 to 80 must grow, right? Be it wheat, rice, anything that he puts it as a seed. So what was told to us by an NGO which is working on this, or agriculture office which is working on this, that the seeds, for example, needs to be stored for 2 years. I was a bit surprised, 2 years, 3 years sometime, because every year you get the crop, you know, so why do you have to sort of really store? But they say that sometime good quality seeds need to be stored for 2 to 3 years. And then the science of seed storage or grain storage tells us that only if you keep the seeds in a certain conditions or parameters like temperatures and relative humidity, then only germination count will be maintained. Otherwise, over a period of year, your germination count will come down and the seed will be no good as a seed, right? What is relative humidity? I mentioned some parameters like temperature. Temperature everybody understands, right? You control the temperature. What is relative humidity? What is relative humidity? Right? Precisely. So, often at times people, I mean those who are mechanical engineering, thermal engineering understand the ACs normally need to control not only temperature but also relative humidity, So as he rightly said, the relative humidity is the moisture content of air to the saturated air, okay. So down you have the saturated air and then the up you have the moisture content of the air. So now can somebody tell me during monsoon what would be the relative humidity of air outside, not inside? Inside we say, let's say we have control. Right? In Mumbai, for example, if you walk during monsoon, those who are coming from drier areas feel very, right, humid and you know, sultry. We say its weather is very sultry because the relative humidities are high. So how high could be relative humidities during monsoon in Mumbai, for example? Any guess? Yeah, precisely. So if you get Times of India every day, in the first corner you will mention temperature, Colaba, Santa Cruz. Right? Those IMD people would mention air temperature and air relative humidity. So 90-95%. So what happens that these science and technology of food storage or grain storage systems tell us that if your relative humidity is in the air where you are storing your material goes high, you are likely to get all those fungus, molds and all that. It's very easy to understand, you know, in areas like Mumbai, my wife will never ever stock rice for more than 3 months in the house. And now we can understand the reason why she does not stock rice for more than 3 months. Right? The moisture ingress would be there from air because air has got higher relative humidity. Moisture will come and then I'll have all those kind of fungus and all. Or to give you another example, in the months of summer, March, April, May, if I keep my bread loaf on my dining table, 3 days nothing will practically happen. In this time, if I keep my bread loaf, on second day I will start getting some green, yellow, red, blue, some fungus or all that will come. So, you understand the influence of relative humidity. So, what happened to this particular NGO or the Palghar district, there is an office called Atma, Advancement of Technology in Management in Agriculture. They gave us this problem of seed storage. So, they stored seed for 1 year. Initially, their germination count was something like 90%. In a year's time, it fell down to 7%, 8%. So, they said for small farmers, can you design seed storage systems? And it's not rocket science, as I said again. If you just control the temperature and relative humidity and give fridge-like conditions, domestic fridge में कितना temperature होता है? Anybody has an idea? अपने घर का temperature, not the freezer section, the other section, उसमें कितना temperature होगा? Any guess? Right? Excellent. Again, another AA. 4 to 8 degrees Celsius. Okay. Freezer में is sub-zero, right? Less than 0. But in the other section is between 4 to 8 degrees Celsius. So there must be some research must have gone in to design these fridges, right? Godrej, I'm sure, would before they made or before Godrej, wherever they got the design. So we studied then, for example, what are the conditions to keep this stuff, and we found that really we don't have to go to 4 to 8 degrees Celsius. 15 degrees Celsius to 17 degrees Celsius is largely good enough, right? Because more you would, for example, go down, more you would need. What is the disadvantage? Let's say if I am happy with 15 to 18 degrees Celsius and I still make my seed storage system which produces 4 to 8 degrees Celsius, what would be the problem? I mean, I have over designed one, you see, right? Your energy spent. The farmer, for example, he says that I cannot pay more than 5 rupees per day to maintain. Let's say I have designed this 100 kilogram equipment which can store 100 kilograms of seed. Now, can you imagine the feet of the farmer? He says maximum 5 rupees. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 10 रुपये दे देंगे हम ग्रुप में भी आके 10 रुपये पर डे एज अ यूटिलिटी कॉस्ट, एनर्जी कॉस्ट. सो आवर ऑब्जेक्टिव फंक्शन इन डिजाइनिंग दिस सीड स्टोरेज सिस्टम वाज that we should use minimum energy, and then for example we used a principle called TEC, thermoelectric cooler. So anybody from electronics area has gone through this TEC, thermoelectric Peltier effect सुना है आपने फिजिक्स में? हाँ, जो थर्मोकपल जो आता है, थर्मोकपल. So what happens in a thermocouple is you have two dissimilar metals, and if you expose it to delta T, some temperature difference, it gives you millivolt. So इसका exactly reverse is called Peltier effect. So now I had delta T here, I get millivolt. If I put millivolt here and I have dissimilar metals, what would I get at the other end? Temperature difference, right? And I want to create that temperature difference. Outside temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, I want to have 15 degrees Celsius inside. So we use that TEC equipment to sort of get this cooling effect. So that was this third project, the fourth project, and then we had something, since I said I worked on malnutrition, and in Dharavi, for example, slums, which has an area of, as we said, something like 2.5 kilometers square, there is these institutions called Anganwadis. किसी ने सुना है आंगनवाड़ी? छोटे बच्चों, preschools actually, between age of 3 to 6 years, and since, as we said, is a forceful migration at times because they have work here. So the parents do not have much time to look after their children, and they are often at times malnourished. So then, for example, there is method of measurement which the doctors do not follow sometime, and then there is a science of statistics, right? How many of you have studied statistics? थोड़ा सा यूज करते हैं, स्टैटिस्टिक्स करते हैं ना, स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन, Z scores and all that. So there is a way, how do we sort of so there are large databases called NFHS, for example, National Family Health Service, which gives you the data, and you sort of say, for example, that you have so what I am trying to say that again an interdisciplinarity. some doctors are little averse to using statistics and numbers, and that's how we sort of created this difference. So this bell curve, everybody knows, I'm sure you would have seen this. So you have something, this is a mu average, and then you have this +1, -1 standard deviation, -2, +2, right, and then +3, -3. Okay, so then we defined in a certain way which are the sort of population which is sort of the kids which are need a special attention, which are called severely acute malnourished or moderately acute malnourished. So we use some number game for them from these. There are something like 300 Anganwadis. Can you believe? In one single locality, 300 Anganwadis. Normally the norm is each 1000 children they give you one Anganwadi. So you can imagine that many number of Anganwadis. So we sort of chose from this those who are severely and moderately acute malnourished, and our job as a technological institution was to devise a food supplement which is has good enough calories and enough proteins, and how do you bring them out of this, okay. And as we say, for example, simple to understand is this is something their growth path, that this is the time you are born, and over a period of time, let's say whatever 5 years you grow like this. What would be on the y-axis? If I say this is their growth path of a child, so this is 0 and this is, let's say, 60 months. What would be on the y-axis? If I want to monitor their growth, this is what the pediatricians use, right? Weight or height, right? Weight or height. So you just monitor their weights, for example. So our job as a IIT food technology branch was to sort of, let's say you have a 3 months period here. Intervention time is 3 months, and these guys are actually, let's say, lagging behind like this. How do you take from here to here? Okay, so that was part of that. How do you design that food supplement which has got good calories, calorie dense, protein dense food, and you can take them from here to here. So that was the problem definition there. So I am going to pause a little here and take an opinion from you. I have films on each of them. Which one you want to see first?
We narrate to you a story of converting cotton stalks into animal feed. India produces about 43 million tons of cotton stalk every year. Currently, cotton farmers all across Maharashtra and particularly in Vidarbha region simply burn it on field, and small portion is converted into fuel briquettes. Animal-based foods, both milk and meat, provides nutritional needs of Indians, as well as it provides additional income to farmers. The practitioners as well as veterinarians clearly observe that stall-fed animal husbandry is more productive compared to field grazing. This has enhanced demand for formulated feed. Data in recent years indicates demand of 67 million tons of feed. Since cotton stalks are hard, animals do not eat it. Research experiments at IIT Bombay using ozone breaks lignocellulosic bond and makes it softer. This project allowed in vitro studies on cotton stalk that yielded digestibility enhancement from 40 to 60%. Towards in vivo trials on goats, a feed production facility has been set up at Nagpur Veterinary College. Pelletization allows uniform formulation of roughage and concentrates. Initial trials on goats gave very encouraging indications of animals relishing the formulated feed. The research team is now in the process of evaluating quantitative response to the formulated feed towards weight gain and productivity. As cotton crop is spread over large distances and stalks have very low bulk density, collection at centralized location is challenging. Another challenge is techno-economics for commercialization. A business model covering collection, formulation containing concentrate and roughage, pelletization and distribution needs to be worked out in association with the stakeholders such as farmers and farmer producer companies.
Okay, little more clear, right? They say all these communication technology is better communicates than what I tried to speak to you. We'll try and see this Mogra jasmine flower thing, because jaggery perhaps tomorrow Professor Mahavini might cover to an extent. So I will sort of this open with
Mogra is a high-value ornamental flower often seen adorning women's hair and used in celebrations across India. Of all the cultivators of Mogra, Palghar in Maharashtra ranks highest in the state's production. As outreach, about 90 to 95% of the Mogra flowers retailed at the Dadar flower market is cultivated by the tribal farmers of Palghar. Data also states that in summer 2018, about 10,000 kgs of Mogra were retailed in this market every day. This decade-old cultivation initiative has been formed by a cluster of farmers and has provided an alternative source of income during the non-monsoon seasons. Since 2004, Mogra cultivation has contributed to the arrest of seasonal work-related migration of farmers to near urban and urban areas to some extent. They were reported to have migrated to Vasai, Virar and a few suburban areas of Mumbai before this activity. Since 2012, the same problem of farmer migration was seen to have resurfaced. Here, the possible role of the cold storage technology intervention to achieve high quality produce with unopened and white colored buds was identified by the team from IIT Bombay. In an effort to understand the problems and constraints faced by these farmers, a design-based exploratory study was conducted as a part of the master's program by Srinit Rathi, a Tata Fellow from IIT Bombay, under the guidance of Professor Narendra Shah and Dr. Suhas Zambre. The Collector Office at Palghar and Tata Centre for Technology and Design, IIT Bombay, along with local support from NGOs like BAEF at Jawahar and Swaraj at Mukhada, have carried out the field project to test the cold storage initiative and analyze the income effects post the intervention. The post-harvest technology for Mogra cultivators was developed after several levels of interviews, discussions and feedback from all stakeholders such as the farmers, traders, collection centers and the middlemen who act as transport operators. The pilot trials from February to June 2018 have established economic patterns which indicate a reasonable payback within a year. This intervention has enabled the Mogra cultivators to help store the harvested Mogra produce in the cold storage unit for the day in case the quantity is not viable enough to be transported that day. The cultivators now also have the bonus of added time to their Mogra plucking hours. What used to end at 7:30 am has now been extended to 11:30 am, thus offering 4 extra hours for plucking the entire harvest with this storage facility. The ability and time to grade the Mogra between bold and normal categories is thus available to the cultivators. Further testing during the winter months from October to February will involve replicating the intervention with the same set of farmers in coordination with the field actuators like NGOs and government organizations. This should help disseminate the technology. As a part of the SWOT analysis, the IIT Bombay team anticipates a constraint which is outside the scope of this intervention: water availability during summer for Mogra cultivation. The hope is that this challenge can be overcome with sufficient inputs from the stakeholders. With this solution developed, the Mogra farmers can now increase their plantation area by up to 300% without being constrained by the market linkage problems. The Centre hopes that this cold chain based value enhancing technology intervention can be walked through to the next level.
Two things here we can just so two things here, one plus and one challenge or minus. So what was the one plus if I asked you about the technology intervention of supply chain system? So please take it up here. So what is the plus of this? What is the plus of this intervention on supply chain, cold supply chain in the Mogra? What is the plus that you have seen in the video? Right? Extra time. Otherwise, they have to get up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. It's a drudgery, you know. Just because the other market closes at 7 o'clock, and as sir said, it's about 1500 rupees per kilo. That's only in the first 2 hours. If you bring it at 12 o'clock noon, today they won't, for the same Mogra, same quality Mogra, they won't given you even 200 rupees per kilo. So it's time has a value there. So then that was a drudgery. Dark mein jaake, then you have a snake bites and all that, you know. So we did some kind of an intervention, like the miners use some kind of a headgear, right? You have a lamp there, mining people do, right? So something like that, so that you have both hands free. Otherwise, what they would do is they would take the mobile, one person with, you know, torch, and other, then your sort of, you know, productivity is also restricted. So that is one plus, that they got extra time. But what is the challenge, which is not said perhaps well in the video clip, but what could be a challenge to operate? So that's one thing which very good you pointed out, that we don't know like whether the quality will retain after it really comes to the end user consumer, because its premium is lost if the bud opens into a flower. You know, somehow the ladies want to put that in a bud form. Agar wo khul jata hai, if it becomes a flower, then it's
The lifetime of the banana, because even if you are putting it there, it will last for 1 or 1.5 days. But if you put it in the fridge, after that, if you are using, like you cannot use it for
longer time.
Minimum after 5 hours we cannot use it.
Right.
But if you are not using the fridge, it will last for one day or 1.5 days.
So, but otherwise, in terms of technical challenge, so it's fine that we have developed this cold storage system where you can sort of keep it at 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. But what do you see as a challenge in the villages or rural areas of India? Electricity availability, you know. So many of the farmer groups, so we gave it to 3 clusters actually, and what has happened is last 20 years only these, you know, farmers have multiplied from 30 to 6,000 now. Earlier there were only 30 farmers, now there are 6,000 farmers who are going. So this is sort of, you know, replaced the Mogras that used to come from Bangalore. You know, 20 years back there used to be a plane which used to bring Mogras from Bangalore to Mumbai. So they provided, and this creates some kind of a livelihood option and all that. So they have now asked us inverter based cooling system, right? So you know that there are some inverter ACs or something like that. So it would add on to the cost because you have to put the batteries. So there is an initial cost. So what happens is, like if you have put on your machine which is on the grid electricity and suddenly electricity goes off, you know, you have to put it on the batteries or something else. That's a challenge, but very good. We take your point that, you know, we are sort of wanting to study that how long will it sort of the freshly Mogra. So fresh Mogra after 5 to 6 hours it converts into bud, into the flower. Then if it is converted in there and there 150 kilometers here, market here does not respond to that, you know. just price just cuts down. It has to come in a bud form. So therefore this interval. Yeah, so in the cold storage now we see that literature also indicated, and we also confirmed to it that it should be between 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. So if there is a thermal engineer, will say, how about taking the fridge, 4 to 8 degrees Celsius are mentioned it there. So how about using the fridge? What is the challenge here of using fridge? Why did we have to design a separate equipment? Why not just take off the shelf, the domestic fridges that you have? It has a similar volume, right? 300 cc, 200 cc. Oops, careful. So it's the same volume. Why not take fridge and put it there? Anybody else? The fridge, for example, need to be sort of adopted, because in the fridge, for example, essentially there are 2 compartments, like at least 1/4 of it is deep fridge or something like that. Okay, and other 3/4 is like regular 4 to 8 degrees Celsius, and it's often at times I don't know, I haven't seen a fridge where you can sort of set the temperatures that way. So you need between 2 to 6 degrees Celsius, and here you have designed the trays just made for this commodity. We will have to face this challenge. For example, people will ask us, a thermal engineer, how about, because the advantage is that the fridges technicians are available, anybody can service it. Who will service your devices? Who will service this? And it could be commodity specific. Right now the designs that we have made is specific to Mogra, for example. Can we adopt it to other crop species? Can we adopt it to, because Mogra, as we said, is only 2 blooms, 6 months in a year, right? How do we use it for other 6 months? That's another challenge. Perhaps we can keep milk, maybe, right? Milk can be stored for I don't know, at least the pouch milk can go for about 5 to 6 days, right? In a fridge, you can keep it near 0 degrees Celsius. So 2 degrees Celsius, for example, you can use it for. So that's another challenge. So I'll show you one more video, and then perhaps we'll take the questions. So which one I should show, or shall I show you the seed storage wala or Dharavi project? Jaggery, you want to see Jaggery? You want to see Jaggery? How many for Jaggery? Okay, so we'll show Jaggery because lots of hands.
We are now going to narrate to you a story on jaggery making and how the research and development team at IIT Bombay moved from a traditional cottage-based industry to a continuous technology-driven process. Historically, jaggery has been understood by consumers as a natural product, and with that value attached, it has more and more preference from the urban communities over the white refined sugar. Just to give you a little idea on the total production in the year 2010, all across India, we made something like 10 million tons of jaggery. Jaggery making is currently prominent in the states of Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. So the raw material for making this particular product is sugarcane, and the essential characteristic of this particular distributed small-scale production unit is located at the sites of the farmers' fields, because obviously the advantage of transportation of cane to the production unit and the production capacity in batch mode of 8 to 10 hours per day in a season of about 120 days is something like 1 to 2 tons per day. Before we undertook this project on an intervention to develop a new innovative process, in order to understand the problems, because we had noticed about 6 to 7 years back that while the demand and consumption was almost the same or to an extent increasing, the production had been decreasing, and the primary reason for this was that the process was very labor intensive. To give you an example, 10 years ago, there was something like 900 units working in a single district of Kolhapur in Maharashtra state. But in today's time, there are only 500 to 600 units which are operational. In order to understand the problems in this sector, we undertook a survey of jaggery making units, and we surveyed something like 400 jaggery making units. What we found there was the unavailability and the reliability of labor in the season. When we wanted to produce, the labor was not available. So therefore, we did a survey and found out that there is a great deal of interest in a process which can be a little less drudgery driven and a lot more user friendly. Therefore, what we did was try to understand the conventional batch process. Now, let's look at the conventional process which is traditionally practiced in jaggery making units all over India. Cane is first crushed in the crusher and the juice is transferred to the heating pans. Now, these pans are typically about 12 to 13 feet diameter, very large, and are heated from the bottom with the help of the gas. The gas is burned in a furnace and the juice is then clarified by adding various additives. In jaggery making, lime addition is a very crucial step. Lime is added to adjust the pH of the juice, typically from 4.7 to 6.4. This is to precipitate the major impurities out and make clarification easy. Furthermore, a higher pH prevents inversion of sucrose to glucose and fructose, thereby increasing the hardness and shelf life of the product. In the conventional process, lime addition is done only based on the judgment of the master craftsman, as there is no pH measurement done in this case. Whereas in our process, which is the newly developed process at IIT Bombay, we have completely automated the lime addition and made it operator independent. Now, while doing this, we have to have a man standing there all the time. The precipitate that is formed in this case floats over the surface. This has to then be removed continuously, and that is how clarification takes place. So this is a very high labor intensive process, whereas in our process at high temperature, the flocculants that are added are different, because of which the precipitate has a high density and it settles down, and this makes the process very easy, wherein the precipitate settles down and a clarified juice comes out from the top. This particular process doesn't need any labor at all, and if it is controlled in a precise way, that is how it would be. In a conventional process, once the juice is clarified, it is subjected to evaporation for about 2 to 2.5 hours. It is a continuous heating going on and the water vapors are coming out, and all the time the person standing there has to look at the scum that is coming out from the surface and remove it. Now, during this period, he keeps on adding several additives to maintain the color, maintain the pH, and so on. The juice gets almost ready for crystallization. The master craftsman, who is responsible for operating this particular process as a skill, has to know whether the evaporation is over and if the juice is ready for crystallization. So, he performs something called as the Goli test, which is more of an art than a science, and this is an indication of how much moisture is present in the juice. So, once the evaporation is over, the juice is transferred to another pan wherein it is cooled down to some extent. That is, from 118 degrees centigrade to 70 to 80 degrees centigrade. During this process, the juice gets thickened further and the crystallization starts happening. There is a lot of labor required in this process to stir this thick syrup for about 15 to 20 minutes so that you get nice crystal jaggery. In our process, we are following a different way of evaporation. It is a continuous process, which means the clarified juice that comes from the clarifier goes through different pans. Now it is continuously flowing. There is no manual intervention required in this case. So as it flows from the first tank to the second tank and to the last, there is a continuous heat that is produced and provided to these pans, and water evaporation takes place, the residence time is adjusted in such a way that by the time the juice comes to the last pan, the concentration is just ready for crystallization. Now, you can see a crystallizer that we have used in this particular case, and that it is much different from the crystallizer that is used in the conventional process. We are doing continuous crystallization here. It's a screw type crystallizer wherein the hot thick syrup falls in and gets transferred from one end to the other end. And while this happens, crystallization takes place because of the turbulence that is created. And at the same time, the screw that is rotating all the time takes care of the transferring or conveying the hot syrup from one end to the other. Otherwise, it will not flow. So this particular equipment, which has a conveying screw, not just plays a role of conveying the stuff, but also ensures that it amounts to crystallization. Again, we are saving a lot of labor in this activity. Once the jaggery is ready, it is in the form of a thick paste, and it is a semi-solid material which has some ability to flow. This is then filled in molds, and you can see in the conventional process that it is again done manually with a lot of labor required. It is allowed to cool down for about half an hour when solid jaggery is formed. Then demolding is done and the product is sent to the stores. In our process, we have automated this molding process as well. So we have designed a new molding machine wherein you have different molds of different sizes and they require different shapes. They are used to collect the juice coming from the crystallizer, and they are moved on the belt. And again, the residence time of this mold is adjusted in such a way that by the time the demolding happens, you have the jaggery ready in solid form. The time is of the order of 25 to 30 minutes. Since this is an automated process, it is expected that we require not more than one person to actually control the entire operation. Another big advantage here is that since we have this machine taking care of the continuous process of molding and demolding, it is quite possible that we can have different sizes and shapes that are required by the markets. In a conventional process, the way the heating is done is, you have the bagasse that is generated in a crusher which has about 50% moisture. Now this bagasse has to be dried. So it is transferred on a large piece of land, spread out and sun dried. And you can look at the labor that is required for this particular activity. It is allowed to get dried for about a day or so. That means you need a large piece of land. Again, this has to be a fertile land, otherwise one can grow sugarcane on it. So we are losing that much land just for drying. Now, this bagasse when dried is collected and sent to the furnace. It doesn't just end there. You have a person sitting or standing at a furnace continuously feeding this dry bagasse to the furnace. A batch of about 2 hours, this person is standing and collecting bagasse and feeding it to the furnace all the time. It is a highly laborious, painful job, and not many people are prepared to do this kind of work. Now, once this bagasse is fed to the furnace, which is a pit furnace, it is known that the efficiency of the pit furnace cannot go beyond 40 to 50%. So, the flue gas that is emitted to the surrounding, that is, which comes out of the chimney, has a temperature of the order of 400 to 500 degrees centigrade minimum. That means we are losing so much heat to the atmosphere, and at the same time there are some particulate emissions happening. So overall, the heating system that is used in conventional jaggery making is less efficient and polluting. In the new process, we have an indirect heating system. The primary source of heat is bagasse itself. It is conveyed by the belt to the rotary dryer in which it is dried. Now for drying, the heating medium is the exhaust gas that comes from the burner itself. This bagasse on its way gets dried, and this dry bagasse goes to the burner wherein it is burnt. Now this hot flue gas imparts heat to the thermic oil which circulates inside a burner. Thermic oil takes heat from the burning bagasse and then goes to the plant, imparts heat, especially the evaporators and of course the clarifier. Because we do this kind of indirect heating, the energy efficiency goes up to almost 70 to 75%. With such high efficiency, we save a lot of the gas. To end the story now, it's time for acknowledging the efforts from different organizations and individuals. So the development process took us about 4 to 5 years, and the initial phase of the projects was funded by Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission of Maharashtra State. In the latter part, mostly for automation, the Tata Center for Technology and Design gave the financial funding, and the pilot plant is located at the premises of Tatya Sahib Kore Institute of Engineering and Technology, Varna Nagar. We are grateful to their support. Additionally, we must definitely mention the most important support that the team has got from students both at IIT Bombay pursuing PhD and the Master's program, as well as students from 2 engineering colleges, Tatya Sahib Kore Engineering Institute and the Sharad Institute of Technology, which is located in the Kolhapur district of Maharashtra. Thank you.
So a bit longish, but whatever we have done for 4 or 5 years, I think it's narrated in the film, and I think it's little more clear than what I just said about. Choices, I was told that the tea is outside ready, so we can still take maybe 1 or 2 questions, and otherwise we can discuss over a cup of tea. I mean, the choice is yours. If there is any compelling question, we can talk about now, or we can talk over chai. Chai from jaggery or chai from sugar? Right? Thank you. I think you have been a very good audience.